third ventricle, till here, and third ventricle. In your manual, present mistake, it is nuclei of thalamus, and somebody changed, that is number 4, that is central nuclei, they are reticular formation, and number 5, medial nuclei, that is extrapyramidal system. You should remember that is mistake, medial and lateral heat is wrong. Necessary to change. This diagram only for your understanding, not necessary to draw next time. That is thalamus. Diencephalon consists of thalamencephalon and hypothalamus. And thalamencephalon consists of thalamus, then epithalamus. Epithalamus consists of trigonum habenula, then habenula, pineal body, and commissura habenularum. All of these structures together has name epithalamus. And metathalamus. Metathalamus, that is behind of thalamus, two geniculate body, corpus geniculatum mediale and corpus geniculatum laterale. It is superior colliculus of midbrain, and that is inferior colliculus. Inferior colliculus, with the help of brachium of inferior colliculus, joined with what? Medial geniculate body. That is, both of them, inferior colliculus and medial geniculate body, that is, they are subcortical auditory center. And superior colliculus, with the help of brachium of superior colliculus, it's joined with lateral geniculate body. That is why superior colliculus, lateral geniculate body, and posterior nuclei of thalamus, these three structures, they are subcortical visual center. One again, thalamencephalon consists of thalamus, epithalamus, and metathalamus, that is thalamencephalon, and hypothalamus. Hypothalamus, it consists of optic chiasma, that is chiasma opticum, tractus opticus, then tuber cinereum with the help of infundibulum, joined with hypophysis or pituitary gland, then mammillary bodies, and posterior hypothalamic region, which has posterior perforated substance, substantia perforata posterior. All of these structures together, that is hypothalamus. That is diencephalon. And cavitas of diencephalon, that is third ventricle. Third ventricle has communication with fourth ventricle with the help of what? What is it? Cerebral aqueduct. Yes, cerebral aqueduct, aqueductus cerebri. Who can answer? What is the number of this nerve? What is this nerve? Fourth cranial nerve. Nervus, name of this nerve, nervus brachialis. Why you decide that it is fourth nerve? Because it is inferior colliculus, that is superior peduncle of cerebellum, and that is dorsal surface of midbrain. And fourth nerve leaves midbrain at the level of inferior colliculus on the dorsal surface. And now it is pedunculi cerebri, that is peduncle of the brain. It is fossa interpeduncularis, that is why this nerve is third cranial nerve, oculomotor nerve, because it leaves midbrain on ventral surface through fossa interpeduncularis. Next. So what's about third ventricle? Third ventricle, that is space between right and left thalamus, that is third ventricle. That is why lateral wall of third ventricle, that is medial surface of thalamus. Then anterior wall of the third ventricle, it is above of third ventricle, that is fornix, and fornix continues into columna fornicis. It is columna fornicis, that is commissura cerebri anterior, and that is lamina terminalis. These three structures, columna fornicis, commissura cerebri anterior, and lamina terminalis, they are anterior wall of the third ventricle. Columna fornicis, commissura cerebri anterior, and lamina terminalis. Anterior wall has opening between columna fornicis and thalamus. We have two openings here and here. These openings has name foramen interventriculare, and this opening, that is communication between third ventricle and lateral ventricle. It is lateral ventricles and communication between them, that is foramen interventriculare. Superior wall of the third ventricle, that is telecharyoidea, then fornix, and above of fornix we have corpus callosum, that is corpus callosum. And these three structures, one again, telecharyoidea, fornix, and corpus callosum, that is the roof of the third ventricle. Floor of the third ventricle, that is all structures of hypothalamus, optic chiasma, tuber cinereum with infundibulum, mammillary bodies, substantia perforata posterior, all of them forms inferior wall of the third ventricle. An inferior wall has two recessus, recessus opticus and recessus infundibuli. Recessus chiasmatis, recessus chiasma and recessus infundibuli. Recessus chiasmatis is in front of optic chiasma, and recessus infundibulus, it is opposite to infundibulum of hypophysis. And last, posterior wall. Posterior wall consists of commissura habenularum superiorly, then commissura cerebri posterior inferiorly, between them recessus pineale, and below of commissura cerebri posterior, that is opening of cerebral aqueduct, aqueductus cerebri. That is why you need to know 6 walls, 2 lateral, superior, inferior, anterior and posterior walls of the third ventricle, communication between third ventricle and lateral, and third ventricle and fourth ventricle, and recessus chiasmatis, recessus infundibuli, and recessus pineale. Some words about hypothalamo-hypophyseal system. You know that hypophysis joined with hypothalamus with the help of what? Posterior lobe of hypophysis. What is the name of posterior lobe of pituitary gland? That is neurohypophysis. It's joined with hypothalamus with the help of axons of the nerve cells, and it's not produce hormones. It's only accumulate hormones. They produced in hypothalamus, in paraventricular and supraoptic nuclei, and through axons of nerve cells they transport to posterior lobe and accumulate here. What is the name of these hormones? Oxytocin and vasopressin, or antidiuretic hormone. Anterior lobe of hypophysis, that is adenohypophysis, it's joined with hypothalamus with the help of vessels, blood vessels, portal vessels, and releasing factors. They are liberins and statins, which produced in hypothalamus. They comes to anterior lobe of hypophysis and stimulate or inhibit function of anterior lobe. And which hormones do you know in anterior lobe of hypophysis? Somatotropic hormone, adrenocorticotropic, thyrotropic, and gonadotropic hormone. That is, most of this information you know from histology. I think it is not so difficult for you next time. That is hypothalamo-hypophyseal system, communication between hypophysis and hypothalamus. You need to answer next time the same.